Hello and welcome back. In this chapter, we're going to be covering empathy. So let's start off with a little visualization. Which leg is this little figure kicking the ball with? So it really matters whether you think that the figure is facing towards you or away from you, right? So let's look at the figure, and is there any way to tell if the figure is facing you or is facing away from you? Here, if we put the colorization, you see there's really nothing in the image that helps you to determine whether she's facing you or facing away. So perspective matters, right? Now that we've colorized, you can get an idea of which way she's facing and decide whether she's facing you and kicking with her right foot or facing away from you and kicking with her left foot. Having enough information, being able to put yourself in the perspective of someone else is really what we're talking about with empathy, right? Being able to put yourself in someone else's position, being able to see the world the way somebody else sees the world, reacting the way that somebody else might react. Now, let's separate compassion and empathy in our minds. Compassion tends to refer to feeling what another person is feeling, having emotional empathy, being able to put yourself in their position and actually feel sad that they're sad. Imagine yourself in their situation so much so that you actually react as if you're in their situation. That's emotional empathy. When we talk about empathy, a lot of the times in psychology, what we mean is seeing things from another person's perspective. So being able to imagine what it would be like to be that, an employee for that company. That would be empathy, right? I can imagine what it's like. Imagine going through the motions that the actor is going through. That's empathy. Emotional empathy is actually feeling what another person's feeling. We probably mean compassion by that. A lot of times the term that we use in psychology, you could drill it down and say, what we're really talking about is cognitive empathy, being able to think about it and imagine. Those are cognitive actions. I just took a training course, and I can't remember what the training course was about, but I remember them bringing these things up. And one of the things that they were emphasizing is that emotional empathy is the one that is the most important. It depends on what you're talking about, whether it's the most important, because emotional empathy is the kind of empathy that can actually lead people to develop post-traumatic stress disorder from hearing about what someone else has gone through. They are so deeply and fully emotionally empathetic towards what the person is saying that they're actually experiencing it as if it's happening to them. I'm not sure that's always better. I mean, there's got to be a line on the degree to which that's better. If it's actually harming you because your empathy is so profound, your emotional empathy is so profound, that's probably not in our best interest. Whereas cognitive empathy, being able to put ourselves in someone else's position and imagine what it would be like, I can't imagine a situation where that would be harmful to us, to really be able to understand someone else's perspective. I can imagine situations where too much compassion can actually be harmful. So I'm going to say that. So empathy is built up of, self-awareness, sort of knowing how you are feeling and knowing your own states. It's dependent on a theory of mind. The theory of mind refers to your ability to understand that other people have other things in their mind. They may not be knowing what we know or feeling what we feel or seeing what we see. Once you have a theory of mind and realize that what's inside someone else's mind is private and separate and independent, that puts you into a different perspective than when you think everybody's having the exact same experience. You don't have a theory of mind yet. Perspective taking is part of empathy. And then emotional contagion is something else that can come from empathy. So let's look at our little book, our PDF on page 50. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. That is not what I meant to do at all. I meant to do this. Page 52, and I went ahead too far. 52. We have a little self-test that we can complete called Components of Empathy. I'm going to make this bigger. And in this little self-test, you can answer questions, which they put the little scale at the top, and then the questions are all on the next page. And so if you look this over and complete this scale, and as always, it gives you the scoring and all that right here on the page, you can get a little bit of insight into your ability to take someone else's perspective. So this scale is really useful for that. So you can go ahead and take that scale to measure your tendency towards empathy, really, the components of empathy. Now, there's going to be a series of videos that are going to follow this that all get into different aspects of empathy. So this video is going to explain self-awareness. This video is going, if you're going to skip any videos, don't skip this one. This one's awesome. If you've never seen it before, it is awesome. And it gets into this issue of you are not born with a theory of mind, and that there's really a breaking point between the childish, younger child who doesn't understand that what they know is not necessarily shared by everybody else, and then the more sophisticated child's mind, where they start to develop a theory of mind and they start to understand that what's in their own mind is private, what somebody else knows might be different from what they know. So watch this video. And then this one talks about perspective taking. So this one's a really good video on that issue. So that little film festival for you in the playlist. Now this one gets at emotional contagion, and they use as their subjects, chimps and babies, and you can see how this is probably a pretty innate quality that yawning is contagious. I don't know if you've ever yawned in front of your dog and your dog yawned, or your dog yawned and then you yawned, or maybe your cat or something. It shows us that this kind of emotional contagion, yawn is an example of something that's contagious. I try not to ever say that word when I'm talking because it makes people do it, so I should stop saying it. But that those are things that we pick up from each other, just like we pick up other emotions from each other. And so this video gets into that. All right. The last video, I wanted to set you up for a second with what they're going to be talking about by showing you this picture of mirror neurons that have been mapped out on brains. And then the next thing in the playlist is a video on mirror neurons. And so what you're looking at here is on the top row is the rhesus monkey's brain as they were actually reaching for the peanuts themselves. And you can see which parts of the brain are the most active. If it's a lighter color, it's more active. The ones that look just like gray, those parts weren't implicated in reaching. And you can see there are areas where the motor neurons are that are really active, but you can see other parts of the brain that are really active during the actual reaching for something. Down here on the bottom row is when they watch someone else reach for the peanuts. And you can see some of the same areas. Here I'm just looking at these middle ones. You can see some of the same areas that are lit up almost exactly the same. Not perfect. I mean, if we knew our brains well enough, we'd be able to say, no, I can see some significant differences. On the left side of the brain, you see pretty good activity in the occipital lobe back there. On the right side of the brain, you're seeing more activity when they're observing than you see when they're actually doing it. So this is obviously having to do with like visualizing what was happening. So you can see like similarities, I guess I should say, in how the brain looks when actually doing the behavior versus watching someone else do the behavior. Now that I kind of oriented you to that, you can watch this video and it tells you that exact thing, but it doesn't show you the brain areas that were involved. So enjoy your playlist of excitement, and we will come back after you've watched all of those and we'll talk about some of the impacts of empathy on different kinds of behaviors.